Hey there, all you fantastic people. I hope your day has been absolutely wonderful. We're back for another exciting episode of What If Naruto Became the Wind Lord. Make sure to show some appreciation to the talented author behind this fanfiction. You'll find the link waiting for you down in the description. In this What If, Naruto finds some scrolls that contain Fūton Jutsus. When he goes to ask the old man about them, the answers he gets will change his life. If this What If has your imagination running wild, drop a comment down below and let me in on your thoughts. And don't forget to explore the array of other captivating what ifs available on this channel. Alright, without further ado, let's kick off this video and dive into this exciting journey. It was fairly early as Naruto prepared to leave Kakaku's home. He knew that Hinata had already left to avoid any awkward moments. Today would be the day they would fight, if he defeated Lee, of course. This wouldn't be like their spars in the past. This would be an all-out fight with both of them showcasing all their skills to the village and on live TV. Both of them had something to prove, not only to themselves but to everyone else out there. To Hinata, this was her chance to show everyone that she wasn't that weak little girl that was kicked out of the Hyuga clan. For Naruto, this was to show all those people out there that he was a skilled shinobi and not just a container for the Kyuubi. Neither of them needed the distraction of negative labels. Naruto was doing some light stretches while Kakaku and her two goons were checking out the damages that had been done to the outside of the house. Jiraiya was watching her while taking out his notepad from time to time but never wrote anything down. He just put it away. While he might be a super pervert, he wasn't going to use the sister of one of his students as material in one of his books. He had some morals after all. However, he was fighting a very powerful urge to do it, seeing that her tight outfit seemed to be even tighter in the morning. Shaking his head, Jiraiya walked over to Naruto and gave him a serious look that caught his attention. "Naruto," said the old pervert, "I want you to be careful when using the Rasengan. It is a very powerful and dangerous jutsu to be used carelessly. I want you only to use it in this exam if you are in a tight pinch. From what I was earlier, the only one who I can see might be a problem will be that Gaara kid. Also," at this point, Jiraiya leaned closer to Naruto to whisper in his ear, "if you start to use that too early on in the exam, then the odds against you will go down." "Thanks for your concern, Ero-senin," said Naruto with a deadpan expression. Jiraiya's eyes widened like dish plates, and he gave Naruto a smack on the head. "Stop calling me that gaki!" he barked. Naruto just backed up a few steps as he rubbed his head. "Hey!" came a voice that caused Naruto to groan a bit. Both shinobi turned to see Ganju walking towards them. Behind him were his four henchmen who were all walking several long steps behind him. "Listen up, I'm going to be watching you in the exams, so you better not lose." Upon hearing this, Kakaku turned to look at her brother with a raised eyebrow. "Not that I care or anything," said Naruto as he scratched the back of his head. "But you really don't have to do that." Ganju then grabbed Naruto by his shirt and picked him right off the ground until they were at eye level. Naruto was a bit taken back by this level of closeness and was wondering why no one was stopping this guy. Then Ganju spoke. "My Nai-san was killed by the Yondaime," declared Ganju. Naruto's eyes widened when he heard this. "Ganju, don't you dare!" shouted Kakaku before Naruto could shout a protest to the claim. Ganju turned his head to face his sister and looked at her with the most serious look he had ever given her to date. "Why don't you shut up for a change and let me talk?" snapped Ganju. Sweat began to pour out of Naruto when he heard Ganju say that. He was talking back to a psycho woman who nearly destroyed her house just to get them to stop fighting. Imagine his surprise when it looked like she backed down. Ganju then turned his attention back at Naruto. "My Nai-san was a brilliant shinobi. He graduated from the academy when he was only 11 and was then placed under the tutelage of Jiraiya-san. He moved through the ranks like lightning and even had a team of his own. He was well respected and loved almost as much as the Yondaime. Then, on the night the Kyuubi attack, my Nai-san was killed. The murder weapon was one of the Yondaime's special kunais that only he had. I was young then and I don't remember everything. However, I do remember seeing his body brought back to here with the kunai still in his chest. I also remember my Nai-san thanking the Yondaime. Even as he died, he didn't hate the man who killed him. And after the battle was over, no one looked into my Nai-san's death. No one wanted to hear anything bad about the hero who saved the village." Naruto just stared at Ganju, with mouth open. From everything that he knew about the Yondaime, he had been a good person. He would never kill an ally, let alone his own teammate. There had to be more to the story, there had to be. Behind Ganju, his gang was in tears. "Oh, the boss has been holding back those feelings for years," cried one of them. "Why did he say those things?" demanded Ganju. "Why didn't he hate the man who took his life and his future?" I kept asking myself those questions, and I began to think about shinobi in general. They lie and kill for a living, nothing more than hitmen who will do anything for the right price. But you seem to be different from the rest. What you said yesterday made me think that there might be good shinobi out there that are like how my brother used to be. So that's why I'm going to see if I'm right about you. A smirk appeared on Naruto's face. He then gripped Ganju's arm and applied some pressure. Ganju then let go, but Naruto didn't fall, he just floated there. Ganju took a step back in shock at seeing Naruto fly for the first time. "Just watch me then," declared Naruto. He then shot up into the air and began to fly away. Ganju shouted at him to wait up and then began to follow him on foot, completely forgetting Bonnie. "You should really tell him about what happened," said Jiraiya as he crossed his arms. "I know I should," replied Kakaku. She then sighed. "But I doubt that he would believe me at this point. He needs to figure it out on his own. Besides, now isn't the time to be worrying about that. Isn't that right, shopkeeper?" Behind her appeared a familiar man with an old green and white striped hat. "Everything's all done on my end," said Kisuke with a devilish smirk. "Today is the day," cheered Koto into her mic. She was standing in the middle of the arena for the final matches of the Chunin exam. The area was like a clearing. There were several trees, a small pond, and not much else. All around were large walls meant to keep the thousands of spectators safe from any jutsu that might miss. Standing in a straight line were all of the genin who were going to be fighting, including Sasuke. The Hokage had made it very clear that if Sasuke was late by even a second, then he would be disqualified. Speaking of the Hokage, both he and the Kazekage were sitting on a stand with a large screen TV above them for instant replays. "I'm your hostess with the mostest, Koto. Now before we begin, let me go over the rules. You are disqualified if you surrender, die, or if I say you're done. And don't worry about me playing favorites because when it comes to fighting I'm completely neutral. Other than that, there are no rules, so let's have a bloodbath." The entire crowd's sweat dropped when they heard her say that. "Allow me to fill in for my partner," said Yuri, who was in the stands. "She will stop any match when it looks like one of the combatants is about to die. However, there may be times when she will not have the chance. Still, should it look like one of the combatants is unable to continue, the match will be stopped. Right, Koto? Hi, said Koto as she waved off Yuri. Don't worry, if they are unable to enjoy the pain of battle, then I'll stop them. More sweat drops along with whispers that she might not be all there in the head. Alright then. First match will be Rock Lee versus Uzumaki Naruto. Everyone else please head to the competitor's stand. The match will begin in just 5 minutes, so everyone has until then to make their bets. In a random bar, Tsunade was already making her bets. Put $500,000 on the Uzumaki Gaki, yelled Tsunade. Shizen began to weep. That money was supposed to pay a couple of our bills, she cried. Tsunade looked at her for a moment and grinned. I've got a good feeling about his one, she replied. Now it was just Lee and Naruto standing in front of each other. Koto stood in between them as the wind blew, kicking up dirt as it did. The crowd, once loud as all hell, was now silent. Naruto smirked as he began to float several inches off the ground. Standing on one of the upper levels was Niji, who was holding onto a railing while gritting his teeth. He should have been the one down there and not Lee. Wow! Koto cried out with a blush. The match hasn't even started yet and already the Kaze-shu is using his wind power. He must be as excited as I am right now. That didn't sound right to me, muttered Yuri. I have been training hard for this fight, said Lee as he got into his stance. Let us give it our all. Right back at ya, said Naruto. Hajime, yelled Koto as she did a whirl. Instantly, Naruto shot into the air and continued without any signs of stopping. Oh wow. It's like Uzumaki-kun has become a rocket. Will he break the atmosphere? Isn't he out? Asked someone in the crowd. A small murmur began. Don't worry, said Koto. The crowd stopped talking and turned their attention on her. According to the rules, you are only out of the arena when you touch any solid or liquid object outside of the arena. And air isn't either of them, so as long as he doesn't touch anything, then he's still in the game. Naruto continued to shoot up into the air until he reached the cloud line. He stopped, took a deep breath of fresh air, and looked down. Everything on the ground looked so small. Being up high always seems to have that effect on people, as if everyone's problems were so insignificant compared to the whole. But that never really crossed Naruto's mind as he thought about what he would do in this fight. From what he remembered about Lee during the 2 fights he had seen him in, he was a close-range fighter who seemed to prefer to use taijutsu. A smile appeared on the blonde's face as he knew what he had to do. Down on the ground, Lee was watching the sky. He had done his best to prepare to fight an airborne opponent. However, the best experience he had was mid-air combat training and jumping. But he had faith in the training that his sensei had given him. As Lee stared into the sky, he thought he saw something. A moment later he realized he was right because coming at him was Naruto, and he was right in front of the sun, using it as a blinder. But Lee was ready for something like this. He jumped back to avoid Naruto's punch, and then jumped right at him to give him a taste of his own medicine. Lee's fist connected with Naruto's face and Naruto then went poof. "Got ya," said a voice right behind Lee right before a leg flew into the boy's side. Lee slid over to the side rather than falling to the ground, turned and faced Naruto. "Have to admit that I didn't think that would take you down. Just had to see how you would react. After all, you know more about how I fight than I know about you." "That may be true," said Lee, "but it doesn't help me all that much." Lee then charged at Naruto, who shot up to avoid the hit, and then lowered himself again. Lee spun around and then once again charged at Naruto. The results were the same as Naruto simply shot up into the air and then lowered himself back down. "Sorry," said Naruto, "but you're going to have to do better than that if you want to catch me." Lee then smirked, which made Naruto feel a little uneasy as if he asked for something he really didn't want. Lee bent down and pulled out some leg weights from underneath his orange leg warmers and held them up for all to see. He then tossed them to the side, and when they landed they made large craters in the dirt for objects of their sizes. One of them just happened to land near Kodo, and impact blew her back. That was frickin' sweet," she exclaimed. Naruto didn't seem to think so as Lee became a blur a half-second later. Naruto tried to follow the green genin's movements, but he was just too fast. Naruto then tried to get to a higher altitude, but Lee's fist impacted his stomach before he could move any higher. The force of the punch sent Naruto to the ground, and he bounced on impact. Once that happened, Lee kicked him into the air and followed right behind him. Naruto gritted his teeth in pain. He turned his head and saw that Lee was right below his. It was as if he were mirroring his movements. Naruto also noticed that Lee's bandages were beginning to unwrap themselves. Not knowing what would happen next, the Kazeshu reached behind him to get to his supply pouch. "This ends now, Naruto," declared Lee as his bandages began to wrap themselves around Naruto. Lee then grabbed the sides of Naruto's shoulders and yelled, "Omote wrench!" As soon as Lee yelled that, the two of them began a spin dive towards the ground. The crowd seemed to react faster than the move could finish. Tsunade was already cursing her luck. Niji was eagerly waiting to see Naruto's head planted into the ground. Several people in the crowds were closing their eyes, for what would happen next was sure to be brutal. But to those who kept their eyes open, or just happened to be recording this program on pay-per-view, saw what really happened. The spinning object seemed to make a U-turn moments before it was to hit the ground, and then went right back into the air. Then, without any warning, the spinning object split in two with Lee falling to the ground. After Lee hit the ground, he rolled around, and when he stopped he began to hold a wound on his side. A very bloody wound. Up in the air, Naruto was floating while holding the Raijin. "Can we get a replay?" asked Kodo. "And let's get a close-up." The screen above the Kage's box lighted up and began to replay the scene close-up and in slow motion. Once they got to the point where Lee's attack was brought back into the air, the crowd saw what had happened. A bright yellow light seemed to come out of Lee's side. Lee looked like he wanted to scream in pain as the light then moved to his side and then left his body as Naruto was freed. Wow, what a shockingly brutal attack. In my book, Naruto-san gets extra points for cutting and electrocuting at the same time. And look at all that blood, why did I get partnered up with that sadist? Asked Yuri to no one. But it was true what Kodo said about the blood. Lee's spandex was now green and red. The bowl-cut-haired boy slowly managed to get to his feet while holding his wound. However, it was clear to everyone that he was running low on strength. His legs were wobbly. He was panting hard, and had sweat pouring out of his body. "Lee, just give up," yelled Tenten from the stands. "He won't do that," said Guy, who was sitting next to her. "But sensei, he's already lost," exclaimed Tenten. "He can barely stand up right now, and Naruto has a new weapon. He can't win." "I know that," said Guy in a tone that caused Tenten to back off slightly. "And Lee knows that as well. But Lee won't give up no matter how difficult this situation is because he is trying to prove something. Lee, I'll admit that you almost had me, said Naruto. Had I been off by a few seconds, I'm sure I wouldn't be floating here right now. Not bad at all. With that, Naruto gave Lee a thumbs up. Lee looked confused for a moment before returning the gesture. Thanks, said Lee as he tried to get back to his stand. But as soon as he did, he winced in pain. His body felt so heavy and his bones were sore. Still, that didn't stop him from charging as soon as Naruto was close enough to the ground. Lee threw a punch that was aimed for Naruto's face, which was dodged as Naruto ducked under it, and then returned the favor with an uppercut right to Lee's jaw. Wow, said Naruto as he looked at his fist and then back at Lee. I'm surprised that worked. I guess that last attack took a lot out of you. As Naruto said that, he put away the Raijin. No, said Lee as he slowly got back onto his feet. He then looked at Naruto with fierce determination in his eyes. I can't just give up now. I was saving this for when I would face Neji, but I have to use it now. I have to protect my way of the shinobi. With that, Lee began to open up his chakra gates one by one. Kaimon Kai, Kumon Kai, Simon Kai, Shaman Kai, Taman Kai. As Lee released each gate, Naruto could notice a change with him. The bull-haired boy's skin took on an orange-like hue. Then, in a flash, Lee attacked. He rushed at Naruto at a speed the blonde had not experienced yet and slammed his fist into him. Naruto was shot into the air, and before he could get his bearings, Lee appeared in front of him and punched him again. Again and again, Naruto was thrown around the arena due to Lee's punches until Lee grabbed Naruto's shirt and shouted, "You're a wrench!" Lee was then about to deliver a punch and kick at the same time to finish that attack, but Naruto's shirt was cut by an invisible blade that freed him from Lee. Naruto then flew around Lee until he was behind him. Have you forgotten? Asked Naruto. You may have the edge on the ground, but in the air I am at my strongest. Fūton Jutsus. A powerful blast of wind then hit Lee's back and sent him crashing into the earth below with enough force to leave an imprint of the boy that was at least 3 feet deep. Wow! Cheered Koto, who was now jumping up and down like a little kid. Maybe if we're lucky, every bone in Lee's body is broken. Call the match! Yelled Yuri. Fine, grumbled Koto. Ruin a girl's good time. The winner of the first round is Uzumaki Naruto. The crowd burst into a loud cheer while Naruto began to wave back at them. On the ground, medics were pulling Lee out of the Lee-shaped hole and putting him on a stretcher. Hanzo, who was once again watching this from his office, clapped his hands softly. Tsunade began to think about her next bet while Shizen's jaw dropped to the ground. Sex-kun, called out Elf as she looked for Sex in the training fields. She called his name several times before she found him on one knee with his Titan blade resting on one shoulder. He had been out in the training fields since he got his new arm, and had been training with another new item he had acquired from Hanzo for his rematch with Naruto. Slowly he turned his head to face her. What do you want? He demanded as he wiped away some sweat. Naruto-san won the first match, she said. Sex turned his head away and then stood up. Why the hell are you telling me something I already knew? He asked. Elf looked around for a portable TV set or anything that could have told Sex that Naruto had won. However, she found nothing. How did you know? She asked. While she couldn't see it, Sex grinned. Because I've faced him before, replied Sex. Alright, announced Koto as the crowd began to settle down. The next match will be between this Justin from the council, interrupted Yuri, which irritated Koto. The lineup will continue as planned with the next match being Uzumaki Naruto against Shihoin Hinata. The match will begin immediately. The crowd then began to whisper to one another. In the past, it was very rare to have one person fight back to back. Not only that, they were to be given a short break if that were to happen. So, in short, this was very unusual. I have to object to this, yelled Koto. Article 17, Section C of the official rulebook says that a break will be given to any shinobi that has to fight in multiple rounds. As the ref, I can decide to either go on to the next match or give the winner a 10 to 15 minute break. What is happening now is a clear violation of the rules. Hey, don't shoot the messenger, whined Yuri. Besides, they are invoking Section 0, which states that the council can interfere in any match as long as both of the shinobi belong to their village. Besides, if either one doesn't feel up to it, they have the option of quitting. Fine then, yelled Koto. Shihoin Hinata, please report to the arena. I'm already here, said a voice next to Koto. The ref jumped back a bit when she saw the pale-eyed girl standing next to her. Oh, so you are, said Koto as she calmed down. She then cleared her throat as the two genins took their places. We will now begin round 2 of the final part of the Chunin exam. Are you both ready? Good. Hajime. As soon as she said that last part, both Naruto and Hinata rushed over to each other. Naruto made the first move, which was a punch. Hinata countered it by using her arm to deflect the attack away from body. She then tried to kick Naruto, but the boy caught it with his free hand. With no way to stop her next attack, Hinata landed a kick with her remaining leg. Naruto gritted his teeth and then delivered his own counter, a headbutt. Both of them then let go of each other, and they then moved backwards to gain some distance. This is so wrong, said Ino. Around her were the rest of teams 8, 10, and Guy along with their senseis. Why are they fighting each other? I mean, we all know how much Hinata likes Naruto, and that Baka should at least have a clue about how she feels about him. So why doesn't one of them just give up? Because they are both trying to prove something, said Kurenai. Hinata was kicked out of her clan because they deemed her to be weak. Since then, she has worked hard to show them that they were wrong. It's mainly because of Naruto that she has been able to make such progress, and in a way, this match is her way of seeing just how far she has come. Don't forget about the council, said Asuma as he lit a new cigarette. They're pissed at Hinata for beating Sasuke so easily and made them all look like liars on TV. Hayashi was most likely the one who thought of this idea. Hinata will have to fight someone she loves or back down and lose any chance at getting promoted during this exam. Naruto has to fight because if he doesn't, she might take it like he didn't want to hurt her because she is still weak. And then the council will make the argument that Naruto shouldn't be promoted since he refused to fight someone due to an emotional bond. What does that have to do with anything? Asked Tenten. Guy sighed. It is a most unyouthful thing, said Guy. Let's say that Hinata decided to betray the village and Naruto was the closest one to reach her in time. He tries to reason with her, but she refuses and in the end gets away because Naruto refused to fight her. Such actions do not make good Chunin, and if Naruto were to demonstrate such actions, then he would most likely not get promoted. It has happened before, said Kakashi, who was reading an orange-covered book. True, said Kurenai as she glanced over at the area where Hayashi was sitting. But I have a feeling that someone else wanted this matchup like this for personal reasons. Back of the field, Naruto and Hinata were still going at it with close-range combat. Naruto had so far landed at least 3 hits. However, Hinata was able to deliver at least double that in the form of kicks. I thought I asked you not to go easy on me, said Hinata as she avoided another attack from Naruto. She then used Shunpa and appeared behind Naruto with her leg raised for an axe kick. Then, before the attack could connect, Naruto shot forward while being lifted about an inch off the ground. He then spun around and looked at Hinata. Maybe I'm not going easy on you, he said. I know you are, said Hinata as she got into her stance. If you were taking this fight seriously, then you would have been higher up for half this match, or you would have used your favorite jutsu by now. Hinata then used Shunpa again and appeared right in front of Naruto with her fist in his gut. Naruto was thrown back by this, and Hinata prepared another kick that would hit him as soon as he hit the ground. Naruto had other plans because he defied gravity at the last second and shot up into the sky before Hinata could land her next blow. Once Naruto was high enough in the air to feel safe, he sat cross-legged in the air while holding his gut. Maybe I should take this up a notch, he said. Too late, said Hinata, who had used Shunpa to appear next to him in the air. Naruto, however, only slid over to the side and caused Hinata's attack to miss and the girl to fall to the ground. Hinata landed on all fours and then stood up and looked at Naruto, who had also taken up a standing position. Alright, Hinata-chan, said Naruto as he held out both his arms and began to spin them. Soon, both his arms were decorated with a mini tornado. I won't hold anything back. Let's see how well you can handle this. Wow, cried out Koto. It looks like the Kazeshu can not only use the Senpuken on both arms, but at the same time as well. Does Hinata-chan have counter for this attack, or will she be blown to pieces? Upon hearing that, Hayashi let out a grin. Thank you, Naruto, said Hinata as a white glow began to cover her body. Moments later, that material on her shoulders and back seemed to disintegrate as the light seemed to intensify. Seeing that her jacket was now ruined, Hinata quickly took it off for the whole world to see. Ino just stared at Hinata, whose assets were bigger than hers. In the past, Ino had encouraged Hinata to take off her jacket, but now she wished that Hinata had never taken it off. This is my best, Shunko! As she said the name, she aimed one of her arms at Naruto. This jutsu is basically concentrates my chakra and allows me to fire it in a high-pressured blast. But it's very difficult to control. Naruto grinned as Hinata explained her attack and then did a loop in the air. His fists were aching to take on her attack. Alright then, let's have some fun! Yelled Naruto as he flew towards her. Hinata held back her attack for as long as possible. Then, when Naruto was halfway to her, Hinata unleashed her attack. There was a bright light that blinded everyone to what happened, and when it faded, both Hinata and Naruto were gone. "Oh no!" cried Kodo. "It appears that both contestants were destroyed in the attack." Then, someone yelled out that Hinata was alright. Kodo looked around, and as that Hinata had been smashed into the side of the wall, and about halfway up as well. Her eyes were half opened, and she was dripping blood. "Well, there's one of them. So where is Naruto-kun? Damn Hinata-chan, that was crazy!" yelled Naruto. Kodo looked up and sure enough, Naruto was floating in the air. One of his twisters was missing, but other than that he looked fine. "Let's go back to the instant replay," said Kodo. Once again, the giant scene showed what had happened. Moments before Hinata's attack hit Naruto, the blonde used a Senpyuken to block the attack and tilted the airstream upwards so that the blast would be deflected away from both of them. Well, most of it anyways. Naruto stared at Hinata, who was still in the wall. He then closed his eyes, let out a sigh, and then reopened. The look he had now was that of serious determination. He pointed his last Senpyuken at Hinata and charged at her. As he did, Hinata let out a small smile. "Thank you, Naruto-kun," she thought. "I have always worked so hard in order to improve, just like you have. Now I see how far I still have to go in order to catch up with you. And when that happens, maybe you'll see me the same way I see you." Hinata would have continued this thought process. However, it was at that time that she lost consciousness. She then fell forward and down to the ground below her. Seeing this, Naruto deactivated his Senpyuken and caught Hinata in his arms. "Hey Hinata-chan," whispered Naruto. "You did great. It seems that Hinata is unable to continue," announced Koto. "The winner is Uzumaki Naruto. Welcome back," said Yuri into her mic. "For those of you who are just tuning in, we are now starting round 5 of the Chunin exam. In the first 2 rounds, victory went to Uzumaki Naruto. Too bad the rest of the matches weren't as brutal," whined Koto, who was in the middle of the arena floor. "In fact, ever since Naruto-kun fought, it has been a real snooze fest down here. Kankuro forfeited to Aburame Shino before the match even began. And the match between Nara Shikamaru and Temari, while interesting, lacked any bloodshed. What's a girl got to do to get a little blood down here?" "That's enough, Koto," snapped Yuri. "Call the next match already." "Alright," mumbled Koto. "Spoil a girl's good time." "The next match is NarutoHinataAnko vs Tsuchikin." The two said girls appeared on the scene in an instant. As a wind blew across the field, they both drew their weapons. Anko pulled out her snake-like blade, and Yurumi, ready to fight with everything she had. She had waited long enough, and Hinata was out of the exam. Now all she had to do was win this match in order to one-up her rival in love. Kin, holding her scythe with a large bell attached to it by a chain, had her own reasons for wanting this to be over with. She knew that soon the invasion would start. Yet, as she stood there, she was beginning to have her doubts. Orochimaru had cut off all contact with her. Also, she had no idea what had happened to her teammates. Not that she cared about them, but what could happen to her in the near future. Maybe her leader had already taken them back to the village, and pigs had discovered how to fly. As loyal as she was, she knew that failure meant death. There was no escaping that cold hard truth. It was more than likely that she had been hung out to dry now that she no longer had a use other than stalling this exam. And she had no choice but to do it, for she knew the fate of those who dared to defy Orochimaru. "Are you both ready?" asked Kodo. She received a nod from both of them. "All right, Hajime." The two girls wasted not a second after hearing that. Kin rushed at Anko with a frontal attack. Anko, in response, sent her blade towards Kin. Her opponent smirked and moved to the side to avoid the attack. But with a flick of the wrist, Anko manipulated her blade to turn around to attack Kin from behind. Then Anko heard the sound of a bell ring. All of a sudden Kin vanished, and the blade was heading right at Anko. She could have cancelled the attack or sent it elsewhere, but instead she dove to the side. Kin appeared moments later as she swung her scythe where Anko had been. "So that's why Ino was freaking out during her match," thought Anko as she quickly got up. "Genjutsu, that was very impressive," said Kurenai with a slight nod. "What is sensei?" asked Kiba. That girl Kin is combining Kenjutsu with Genjutsu, she explained. Not an easy thing to do for someone so young. It must have something to do with that bell at the end of her weapon. That's right, exclaimed Ino. I heard a ringing sound just before I started seeing things. Then why didn't we all see it? Asked Tenten. Kurenai shrugged. I would have to guess that its effectiveness is either due to range or the amount of people in the area, explained Kurenai. If it covered too large of an area, then the Genjutsu might be weaker. Or she can only cast it on a certain number of people at a time. Or it could still be incomplete. Back on the field, Anko was having similar thoughts. She was no Genjutsu expert, nor did she have any desire to study it. She was a close-range fighter who loved pure combat and thought that Genjutsu users were weak. People like that hide in the shadows and use their illusions to wear their opponents out and then attack them as soon as they were too weak to do anything else. Where was the fun in that? But all of that didn't mean that she couldn't figure some things out on her own. Her biggest clue had come from Ino's match. No one had seen Kin use any hand signs, yet Ino reacted like she had been under a Genjutsu. The only explanation had to be that weapon of hers. Kin, wanting to end the match quickly, charged at Anko and then leapt into the air. As she did, she brought her scythe above her head to prepare for the final blow. Anko saw this and prepared herself to counter it when she heard the sound of a bell once more. Now, instead of one Kin, there were several all around her. Kin thought that Anko would panic. Her Genjutsu was simple and effective. Seals were carved into the staff and bell of her scythe, which allowed her to move chakra into the bell and then release it into a Genjutsu of her choice. All she had to do was think about what she wanted and her opponent would see it. What happened next, however, caught her off guard. Anko swung her arm at one of the Kins and her blade pierced it. Then, with a flick of the wrist, the blade turned and attacked the next Kin. And then the next Kin. This continued until there was only one Kin left who had no choice but to block. In the nick of time, Kin blocked the blade, the staff of her scythe, thinking that its power was diminished. Sadly, she was wrong, as the blade cut through her scythe's staff and pierced her in the chest. She then fell to the ground while still holding onto the two pieces of her weapon. I may suck at Genjutsu, said Anko, but I do know how to handle multiple enemies. It's not over yet, grunted Kin as she got on one knee. She then dropped what was left of her scythe and pulled out Anko's weapon from her chest. She then got on her feet and prepared to grab some saman needles, but Anko yelled, Dokiki Tsuba no Jutsu, and sent several purple acidic balls at Kin. The Otonin tried to dodge them all, but one grazed her left arm and began to melt away the flesh that it had come into contact with. Kin gritted her teeth in pain but refused to give up. She grabbed some saban needles and began to throw them at Anko. So wild and random was her aim that Anko didn't even have to dodge one. Anko, in response, used her blade once and stabbed Kin's left leg. Kin fell to the ground and then pulled the blade out of her leg. What a turnaround! Exclaimed Kodo. In a bloody fashion, Anko has completely turned the tables on Kin. It was true, Kin was covered in blood. Her chest, left arm and left leg were covered in blood. Also her hands were as well from pulling the blade out of her twice. That's what you think, said Kin as she got to one knee. I've out you trapped. Anko looked at her like she was nuts. Then, from behind her, she heard the sound of a bell ring. Anko whipped her head around and saw a saban needle with a bell attached to it. She then scanned the ground and saw that it wasn't alone, for there were at least a dozen on them. The next thing Anko knew was a ringing that was not that of one of those little bells, but that of a grand cathedral bell. No, it was like she was in the bell tower, and hundreds of them were ringing at the same time. It was deafening. Anko's hands covered her ears in an attempt to block out the sound. This was Kin's chance. She quickly got up and attempted to run at Anko. Well, it was more of a limp, to tell the truth. But along the way, she picked up the bladed half of her scythe, and when she got close enough to Anko, she swung it at her. But as Kin swung it, the ringing stopped and Anko moved back before it could tear through her flesh. Her shirt, however, was a different matter. All that remained was her fishnet mesh undershirt that hid nothing. Damn, that was close, muttered Anko as stood her ground. She looked around and noticed a few things in the stands that she didn't like. Like, for example, some of the looks she was getting from the younger men in the audience. However, when she looked at Naruto, she saw that his nose was dripping blood. This is the end, growled Kin. Once again, the ringing started up and Anko felt she had no choice but to cover her ears. Damn it, thought Anko as Kin stumbled over to her. I have to do something or else I'm finished. Once Kin got close enough, a kunai shot out of Anko's sleeve and Anko stabbed her side. However, At the same time, Kin's attack made contact with Anko's shoulder. Moments later, they were both on the ground. "Is this it?" asked Kodo. "A double knockout? Come on, Anko-chan!" yelled Naruto. "Get up!" Upon hearing that, Anko slowly stumbled onto all fours and then onto her feet. "We have a winner!" cried Kodo, and she raised Anko's good arm. Up in the crowd, Kiba was coming back from the bathroom. Seeing Anko without her shirt had caused him some discomfort. The kind that shouldn't be noticed around women. So he had gone to the bathroom to calm down for a couple of minutes. On his way back, he noticed Haku standing by the railing. "Hey Haku-chan," he called out. Haku noticed this and gave him a slight nod. "Been here long?" "Of course," she said. "My cousin is in the finals after all. So, what do you think?" he asked. "Who do you think is going to be a Chunin?" "Well," began Haku. "It's tough to say. Hinata won't for making the match too personal. She cared more about proving something than winning. Anko won't if she doesn't quit before the next round. She's injured and will need treatment right away. Shikamaru is defiantly a Chunin for his tactics and for knowing when to give up. NarutoHinataAnko might be able to become a Chunin as well, but they might look poorly on him fighting back to back like that. It'll depend on the judges." "But he won," said Kiba. "Isn't that what's most important?" "No," said Haku as she shook her head. "What's the point if you complete a mission and your whole team is dead? Sometimes you have to know when to run away or not fight. NarutoHinataAnko hasn't reached his limit yet, so it's still anyone's guess. And now it's time for the final match of the first round," said Yuri. "Due to interference in the second part of the exam, Uchiha Sasuke has been allowed to take part in the final part of the exam. He will be facing off against Gaara." "Who will win?" "Save it, Yuri," said Kodo. "Will Uchiha Sasuke and Gaara please report to the floor?" As soon as his name was called, Gaara turned and walked down the stairs and into the hallways that lead to the arena floor. He had been feeling better lately. Ever since Haku had stopped by, he had been sleeping better. All he did was eat one of the cookies that she had left, and he was out like a light. Never before had he felt so refreshed. Sure, he still had the dark circles around his eyes, but that was to be expected. As Gaara walked into the final passageway, he was stopped by two Kusanine. "Hey kid, our boss wants you to lose in this next match," said one of them. "He bet a lot of money on the Uchiha to win," said the other. "You're in my way," said Gaara. These two guys really annoyed him. Had he been his usual self, he would have killed them without saying a word. Right now, he was giving them a chance to walk away with their lives. Sadly, it seemed like they didn't care if they died. "You little shit," said the first. "Don't you know anything? This exam is not about you. It's for the daimyos to gamble and gloat with each other. Now you're going to lose, or else we'll make sure that you never make it outside. So what's it going to be?" Moments later, their screams were heard and then quickly silenced. Moments later, both Gaara and Sasuke were facing each other. Both looked at each other with eyes that were ready to kill. "Are you both ready?" asked Kodo. "All right, Hajime." Gaara wasted no time. The cork in his gourd shot out and sand poured out of it. Moments later, a Tsunabunshin of Gaara was created. Unlike what Naruto usually did, Sasuke had no problem seeing the difference between the two. Sasuke charged, aiming for the real Gaara. However, the sand clone moved in and blocked the attack. And it didn't disappear. In fact, Sasuke's arm was stuck inside of it. For a moment at least. With great effort, Sasuke pulled it out and backed away a bit. "Seems your defense is as good as Kakashi said it would be," said Sasuke with a smirk. "But don't think that it'll be enough to keep you from me." "Bold words," said Gaara. "You couldn't even make it to this round without someone helping you. You're nothing but a joke. You're barely even worth putting up an effort or even killing." At that, Sasuke growled. "I'll show you," he snarled. Once again, he charged at Gaara while doing hand signs this time. The Tsunabunshin moved to intercept the attack, but Sasuke jumped into the air and yelled, "Kase Handu!" Moments later, his foot was set aflame, and he did heel drop right on the Tsunabunshin's head and destroyed it. Never underestimate the power of the Uchiha clan. "That attack is similar to what Uzumaki uses," said Gaara while completely unaffected. "However, there are differences. First, you had to use hand signs. Also, there is the difference in power between them. Your jutsu doesn't hold a candle to his." Sasuke was about to respond when the sand underneath him began to rise. "But that doesn't mean that I should let my guard down." Sand was about to wrap around Sasuke when he suddenly vanished. Gaara's eyes widened in surprise for a moment. He then sensed Sasuke was right behind him. Gaara turned his head just in time to see Sasuke's foot being blocked by his sand. Sasuke vanished again and reappeared in front of him. Once again he attacked and was blocked by the sand. However, this time he got a little closer. Over and over Sasuke kept vanishing and reappearing to get a hit on Gaara and kept on failing. Finally he yelled, "Kase Handu!" and landed a flaming kick into Gaara's stomach. This sent Gaara flying in the air until his sand caught him and placed him gently on the ground. For the most part he was fine, but some of his sand armor had turned into glass. "Still doubt my power?" demanded Sasuke. "Yes," replied Gaara. "Had that been the Senpuken and it had landed a direct hit, I doubt that I would still be standing here. All you are is a cheap knockoff." Sand shot out from around Gaara and became like a whip that tried to attack the raven-haired ninja. Sasuke, who had just recently learned how to move at these speeds, wasn't used to the strain it put on his body and didn't have the stamina to use it for long periods of time. So right now he was a little winded, but he refused to lose here. As Gaara kept up the attack, he looked up for his sensei. He knew that soon the attack would begin and wanted to see how much longer it would be. All he needed was to look at his sensei, and he would know. However, he saw someone else that made him stop looking. It was Haku. What is she doing here? The invasion will begin soon, he thought. Damn it, she doesn't know. Why do I care so much? I have never given anyone else so much as a second thought before, so why is she so different? As these thoughts continued, Gaara's assault seemed to slow down a bit. Finally, Sasuke was able to get a safe distance away. He then ran up the huge wall until he was halfway up. He's not even paying attention to me, thought Sasuke. Well, it's time for him to learn that it's a bad idea to ignore an Uchiha. With that, Sasuke began a series of hand signs, and when he finished it was as if he was holding lightning in his hand. "That jutsu," muttered Guy. "I can't believe he taught the Uchiha that jutsu." "What is it?" asked Tenten. Guy shook his head. "It's Kakashi's one and only original jutsu," said Guy. "It is very powerful and difficult to control properly. Too much for someone so inexperienced as Sasuke." "That's rich coming from you," said Kakashi as he walked onto the scene. "Didn't you teach Lee two very dangerous jutsus that could kill him?" "That's different," said Guy. "I taught him those over time and made sure that he would know only to use them properly." "But Sasuke is my student," said Kakashi. Back with Sasuke, he was now racing towards Gaara. As he did, he left a path of destruction in his wake caused by the electricity in his hand. He then shot out his hand raised to kill. "Chidori!" he yelled as he neared Gaara. However, before the attack could connect with Gaara, who hadn't been paying any attention to Sasuke, leapt to the side and avoided the attack. Everyone could only stare in amazement. It was unheard of. Gaara ran to the wall, and then up it. Soon he was with the spectators with one goal in mind. Several Chunins tried to stop him, but they were pushed away by his sand. Then his sand went for the target, Haku, as if you hadn't guessed it. "Hey, let her go!" demanded Kiba as he glared at Gaara. However, Gaara didn't stay long as he and his captive made a hasty retreat. Sasuke followed him, fully intent on finishing their fight. With the other combatants, Naruto was gripping the railing. What the hell was going on? Why did that guy just grab his last living family member? He was about to take off when all around the arena feathers seemed to drop from the sky. Suddenly, all his anger vanished, and he fell asleep. "What's going on?" demanded Kodo as she watched everyone fall asleep. Suddenly Baki appeared in front of her. "What's the meaning of this?" "Well, first off, why aren't you asleep?" he asked. Kodo blinked. "I'm a reporter," she said. "I don't rest until the job is done." "That wasn't what I began Baki, but his other two students appeared in front of him. He turned to them quickly. "What's going on with Gaara? The invasion has begun and he's running away? We have no idea," stammered Kankuro. "Well, find him and bring him back," ordered Baki. "He's our secret weapon and the ace in this invasion." With that, his two students vanished. "You heard it here live, folks," said Kodo into her mic. "Suna is attacking Konoha during the Chunin exam. I can only imagine the bloodshed." Back with Naruto, he was just waking up thanks to Urahara. Shikamaru was next to him with a lump on his head. "What happened to you?" asked Naruto. "That's what he gets for faking being under a genjutsu," answered Urahara. "Anyways, the village is under attack. Sasuke is following Gaara who has Haku Itoko," finished Naruto. With that he shot into the air and sped off after Gaara. Urahara sighed. He figured that this might happen. However, Naruto was their best shot at beating Gaara. After all, Everyone else would be busy with the invasion. He was the lowest ranking person they could spare at the moment who had the power to take someone like that down. He then looked at Shikamaru and sighed again. Looks like you'll have to catch up and provide support, he said. Troublesome. I'll make the alternate fight. Naruto stood in front of Temari. Koto had just given the order to fight, and both of them were studying the other. This should be easy, thought Temari. This guy has to be tired from that last match he had. All I have to do is keep my distance and I can win. It was at that moment when Naruto shot forward, surprising Temari. She reached for her fan, but it was too late. Naruto's palm touched her clothing and then he slid past her and fell on one knee in some pose. The blonde from Suna didn't understand what just happened as she turned around to attack him with her arms above her head, until she heard a ripping sound. A moment later, all of her clothing was cut to shreds, leaving her exposed for everyone to see. The girl shrieked and began to do her best to cover herself. Well, said Koto, I guess Temari-chan is unable to continue without any clothing. The winner is Uzumaki Naruto. Thanks for listening. I do hope you enjoyed it. If you want the next part of this video, like, subscribe and comment down below and turn on the bell notification. And also check out other videos that I have created and enjoy. See you in the next video. Peace.